The Articles of Confederation. What were we thinking? The first draft of the Constitution, also known as the Articles of Confederation, seemed like a great idea to Congress. Fresh off the war, America was in quite a patriotic state. Somehow, the pieced-together army that represented the United States had defeated the great empire that was England. Because of our very slim chances of winning, if I lived in this time, I'm sure I would have felt very patriotic as well. Leaders of Congress knew that the new nation would not last long without some central government. But the truth is, no one really knew what to do or how to govern. They'd never started a country before. All they knew was that giving too much power to the national government would reverse everything they fought for in the Revolutionary War. The Articles of Confederation was a first draft that hopefully everyone would agree with. It seemed so perfect. But as time went on, American congressmen soon found that the Articles of Confederation caused more problems than it solved. Soon after the article was published, one big problem arose. Should the government be given the power to impose taxes onto the states? During the war, America accumulated debt from other countries. They quickly found that fighting a war is surprisingly expensive. So anyway, when our country was young, basically all the money the government was receiving went straight to the people that were helping us financially in the war. After only 3 years under the Articles of Confederation's power, the United States went bankrupt. We had absolutely no money. Zero, zilch, none at all. The government desperately needed money. But with the rules constructed under the Articles of Confederation, there was no way to make any. The way the articles were set up, the national government had to ask the states for approval to tax them. Why would the states want to give up their hard-earned money? The idea of accepting the tax was bizarre. So, the Penniless government decided that the country could not continue like this. Something had to happen to the Articles of Confederation. But the real question was, what could they really do? They had to keep the people happy. If you thought that was the only problem with the Articles of Confederation, you would be dead wrong. The Articles not only left the country broke, but also made it way too difficult to pass a law. Each state was given only one vote, and 9 out of these 13 votes had to be in favor in order to pass the law. The states would not come to any sort of agreement, especially in a time when our country was brand new and needed new laws to keep the peace. This was an insane idea to begin with. What were the writers thinking? How was the country kept in order? Or was it not? One more reason why the Articles of Confederation was a failure was that many people were left uneasy over the fact that the U.S. did not have an organized military. At this time, the Articles of Confederation restricted the government of drafting soldiers for the military in case of war. At the start of any country, there is always a constant worry of being attacked, whether this may be due to unrest among citizens or other countries vowing for revenge. There's always the risk of being attacked. If, say, a war had sparked against the U.S., we would not have the right to draft an army at this point in time. We would be left defenseless. Think back to if you were living this time. How would you feel like if your country had no powerful government to protect you? After just a few years living with these new laws, America was crumbling at the government's feet. There was no sort of central government, no army, no money, and no structure. The states, as well as the people, did not respect the central government under the rules of the Articles of Confederation. The writers of the Articles knew that if they wanted to keep this country together, they may end up having to rewrite the script. The Articles of Confederation would go down in history as the famous and terrible first draft of the United States Constitution.
Oh my gosh, we should not have won this. Hey there, everyone. I'm Owen, and I'm going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of each side in the war for independence. if this sounds biased towards the Americans, that's because it is. Let's start with the Americans, the good guys. Advantages first. We were well versed with the land. It was our home, after all. That is a much bigger advantage than you think from a tactical standpoint. We could lead the British to choke points that they didn't know were there, escape them in sneaky ways, and lay ambushes. Next advantage, we had the rifle. Invented in Virginia for hunting, the rifle offered 10 times the accuracy of the musket, the standard weapon of the era, because the grooves, or rifling, in the barrel would cause the bullet to spin for greater accuracy, allowing American sharpshooters to have a devastating effect on the field, and pick off the British before they could shoot us. As for our military leadership, overall, it was pretty good. No, Lee, you were the only exception. Get out! We had legends like Generals Greene, Knox, and the man himself, George Washington. Also, we had everything to lose. If we lost, the taxes would increase, everyone involved would be hung for treason, the British presence would be more impressive than ever, and we would never have YouTube. I'm just kidding. The final and maybe biggest advantage, we used guerrilla warfare. Wrong guerrilla. Guerrilla warfare is the practice of not fighting in standing battles. Trust me when I say we learned the hard way not to do that. Oh God, no. But instead, we would hide in forests and cornfields and kill the British before they could see us, and the British considered that cheating. As for disadvantages, all of our problems go back to the green stuff, or in this case, the gold stuff. We couldn't pay our men, so very, very few re-enlisted when their time in the army was up. We were always low on food, ammo, and weapons. We didn't have dedicated cavalry until much later in the war because of it. This was bad because cavalry are the eyes and ears of the 18th century army, staying ahead of and on the flanks of the main troops to alert of any enemy movement. Also, they were great in combat versus infantry. Lack of artillery was also an issue, and whenever we had some, thanks to Knox, you don't just casually know how to fire a cannon or mortar, so we had to learn from experience. We also lacked sufficient training until this German guy, von Steuben, shows up and shows our men how to properly fight a war. Now for the British. They were the biggest, most well-trained military the world had ever seen. Not anymore. They had more men, guns, horses, ammo, food, blankets, and not to mention the most powerful navy. If it was needed to wage a war, they had more than enough of it. They had experience. Most of their troops had fought in the French and Indian War. Their generals had wartime experiences as well, and most were experienced tacticians, Generals Howe, Clinton, and Gage being a few. Fortunately for us, however, they didn't quite get along. Howe, the overall commander, had a reputation to have a mind of his own, and often ignored the options put on the table by his subordinates. They weren't familiar with the land. I've already mentioned how bad that is. Lastly, they just didn't have the motivation. If they lost, spoiler alert they do, they would only lose the colonies and a little bit of trade and money from taxes. Nothing too serious. In the end, we really should not have won. Told you. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed.
Probably wondering, why do I have a broken foot? Wait, that's not what you were wondering? Oh, you were wondering about representative government. Well, representative government is where we choose people to speak for us, or in other words, make decisions for us and make rules and all that. Representative government would be like you and your mom talking about when you get to go to bed. Now, there's another type of people. There's another group of people from Great Britain, and they believe in a different type of government, or believed in a different type of government. They believed in a monarch type government. And this is where one person is in charge of everything, and they tell you what to do. So it's pretty much like your mom saying, this is your bedtime, and you have to do this because I said so. Pretty annoying, right? Now don't go home to your mom and complain about that, because I'm going to get in trouble for that. But monarchy is where one ruler gets to decide for you everything. The beginning of representative government, it started in the Roman Empire in the form of assemblies. Assemblies were, there were a selected group of people that got to choose the rules for everybody. And representative government was not just a representative government invented by one person, unlike other types of government. It was invented by a whole civilization. The Quartering Act was a thing that the British forced America so that the Americans had to let the British troops stay in their own home. And Quartering Act angered the American, which eventually led to the Boston Massacre. There was a lot of representative government and non-representative government in the Quartering Act because the British people forced the Americans to let their soldiers stay in their house and feed them, and they were pretty mad about that. And the Boston Tea Party was an event that happened because of the Boston Massacre, where the Americans dressed up like the local Indians and dumped over 342 chests into a port. And America, again, was angered about not being represented in so many other events that they rebelled. Now, this is a hilarious joke. They threw tea into the harbor because they wanted liberty, because the Boston Tea Party happened before they got our independence or our liberty. Another one for you is, does anyone know why there is tea in my ocean? Because so much tea was dumped into the ocean during the Boston Tea Party. And that is my presentation on representative government and pre-Revolutionary War events. Thank you.